How great would it be to get up close and personal with the beauty industry heroes we love and admire, and to ask them, how did you learn to do what you do? I'm Chris Baran, a hairstylist and educator for 40 plus years, and I'm inviting all our heroes to chat and share the secrets of their success. This week's guest is a personal friend of mine as well, and I'm really excited about this one. His father, Freddie French, was the inventor of the Denman brush. He is 13 times NAHA finalist and winner. He has taught hundreds of thousands of stylists throughout, now catch this, 28 countries. He has styled hair for celebrities and royalty. Wink, wink, he's a Brit. And he has produced numerous alternative hair shows raising money for leukemia at the Royal Albert Hall in London, New Teeth. He has worked in print, runway, video, and motion picture as well, and I'm sure that's going to lead us to a ton of great stories. His work has appeared in probably every industry magazine in the world. He has guest appearances on the Today shows in America, Asia, and Sydney. He's been on Oprah, Good Morning America, and CNN. And he's had the Lifetime Achievement Award with Bionics. So let's get into this week's head case, Mr. Nicholas French. Nicholas French, my friend, it has been way too damn long since we've got together and had some chats. I know that it's usually when Brian and Sandra Smith and you and I are together and we have some good chats. So I just want to say welcome. It is great to have you on board onto Headcases, Mr. French, if I might call you that.
It's a pleasure to be here, Chris, as always.
Listen, first off, before we go, and for anybody, there is people watching and listening, but for those of you watching and if you're listening right now, it is more to the end of the day. So Nick and I are going to have a little glass while it's going on. So cheers. Here's to you. Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers to everybody. Yeah.
Cheers to everybody's success out there. I think, I don't know for sure. I know that we've crossed paths at shows and so on for right now, but I think the last thing that we really did together was when we were in New York at the Exchange. Wow, and there was Chris Sorby, Ruth Roach, you and I, and we did all the planning for it. And then Chris got pulled away twice on that. And it ended up being Ruth, you and I doing this program. So was that fun for you? Did you have a good time doing it?
I think it was amazing because to me, Ruth and yourself, I can remember two specific hairstyles that very inspired me years and years back to help me develop what I do, and it was fun to work together, and it was so easy. It's like we worked together forever. And, what it's all about is really, not best hairdresser in the world. We're just people seeking different things to do with hair. And I think that's the multiple. I remember you throwing some, years ago, I was doing a show and I saw you throwing this hair and it was sticking in somebody's head. And I thought, God, that's very interesting. And I found out it was with Velcro. So I did something with Velcro 20 years later. And I remember doing the same thing I can't remember what it was called, the presentation. It was amazing. And I remember doing that and my black plastic bag over the top because I didn't want to surprise you because that was a big moment in my life. And I created it and I won NAHA with a look which was Velcroed. And with Ruth, it was, it was porcupine quills.
Yeah.
And I went to a studio and this guy said, this girl yesterday was doing this thing with porcupine quills and there's a couple left on the floor. I thought, wow, that's cool. And I used those for years and years and years. And I surprised her because I did a hairstyle. And she won NAHA as well with that.
Yeah.
And it's a matter of, it's like I was listening to an interview that Grace Codrington, who was one of the sort of, she was a session sort of editor of Vogue for 40 years and a model as well. And she said that Norman Parkinson, who was a photographer that my father worked with, for many, many years, who did thousands of pages in Vogue, say, keep your eyes open 100%, 24 hours a day, because you never know what you're going to see.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. I remember you doing that. And I remember you seeing you doing a haircut. And I was working for Clairol at the time, Logix, which was part of Clairol. And I saw you in this haircut that was fantastic. You were close enough for me to copy it on stage. And they said to me, so I got so fed up with everybody shouting and screaming. I'm very English, I'm very quiet. And I thought, I think I'll try that out. So I had this girl, she was beautiful, do anything to my hair. And I copied it. You were about 30 feet away. And somebody said, that's not the trend, Nicholas. That is not our trend. I said, it's my version, darling, And it was
it's funny you tell that. I think we got off stage and we were having some shits and giggles about that after, and you said that. I always thought you were just joking, and I'm sure you still are to a degree, because listen, the stuff that you do, and I think that your mind is amazing. Simply, and I think you said it earlier, is if you just keep it open. And I think that just like what was said there, that's not our style. But is it the audience's style? Do you and you've always been a disruptor. You've always taken something that other people haven't done it with taste, and then people love it. And because I think that's always the thing that happens in there is, how do you put emotion? How do you put taste? And this is a question I wanted to ask you, because I talked a little bit about it in the opening, but the reality is, you are literally and I'm going to put a capital T, capital H, capital E, the master when it comes to the avant-garde. But I think that there's a difference between having avant-garde, having it tasteful, and not having it look fantasy. So if you had to define to people, in your words, what is the difference between fantasy? Like, if I had to look at something and say, that's fantasy, this is avant-garde, and it's debatable, but what would you put at it?
Well, it's like my dad. I'm writing the book at the moment for my dad from 1922, and the French family of hair to 2022. Actually, it's 100 years. And when I was a boy, when I was 10 years old, I remember going to an antique store with my dad, and we saw this parrot in a glass dome. Polly died May the 8th, 1888. And I was 10 at the time, Chris. And he said, well, carry it home in Chelsea in London. So it's all cobbled streets. He said, don't drop it, don't drop it, don't drop it. And I said, oh, gosh, got home with it. He said, next Wednesday, you're not going to school. You come to the studio and I show you what avant-garde hair is. It's not fantasy, as you said. It's fine art. And I went. And I was 10 years old. I'll never forget it. I've got the picture at home. It's fantastic. And there was a girl inside a glass dome and with this amazing hairstyle and all this sort of feathers and stuff and goodness knows what. And he had a tube in the top so she could breathe, and I had to keep polishing the glass. And he did this beautiful photograph, and it just got the idea from a parrot, stuffed parrot, in an antique store in London on a Sunday with his 10-year-old son, carrying it back. And it's not, you've got to really... The reason I did avant-garde hair, and I never did it until very late in my career, was to really show that we're not just hairdressers, we're really artists. And that was my concern. Yeah. And when I did shows or seminars or photo shoots, and I saw all this stuff going on, and I still see it, bless them, people come up to me with a girl with, she's got feathers in her eyes. She's got all this going on. It's all too much, but they're trying. Yeah, and I never say, "Oh, that's awful." I used to say that years ago. I don't say it anymore. I said, "That's okay. That's a good starting point." Now, if you look at what I managed to step into, very young models, hardly any makeup. It's all the hair was a hero, because we've got to get it through. It's like, it's like Trevor Sorby's first wedge haircut. It was extraordinary. And he got 2 pages in Vogue. Yeah. And my mission was to get hairdressers recognized as hairdressers, rather like Valentino, Armani and Calvin Klein and all those sort of people. And And that was my sort of mission. That was my dad's mission, and my mission afterwards. And so it's really, avant-garde is a very loose term, and I think of it as fine art. I think, and I won't do anything anymore because unless I can find something that's standalone, that's different, that's never been seen before. It has to be original, not Me Too. And I think a lot of people do Me Too, and I coach people, like you probably do for NAHA and stuff. And I said, you've got to think differently. You've got to think out of the box. I like these tear sheets. I mean, recently I was asked by Emilia Pucci, by the company, by Ludomia Pucci, to create some windows for Art Basel in Miami for Art Basel Week. In Miami, you have Art Basel Week, and then Dior do an amazing window. Kristen Dior does a window, and then we have Ford does an incredible window. Louis Vuitton does an incredible window, and they said we want to go back to Alba, who did our hair in the 60s. And Emilia Pucci loved hairdressing, big hair, different things with hair. And she showed me the pictures, Ludomia, that she was in Florence. And could you recreate that, but sort of make it fresh and modern and new? But it's our brand. And that was an amazing project for me to do, because at the end of the day, I made it out of all pure hair. And she said to me on the phone, it's just mind-blowing what you've done here, Nick. And also we didn't believe you could do it because you had all these colours, and our clothes are all these colours. I said, they won't clash. It won't clash. It's going to look like fine art. And I had all these shapes, and the people from LMVH, whatever it's called, who own all these companies now, said, the young girl there said, Nicholas, I'm calling from, Florence. Can I have tear sheets? And I said, no, because they do not exist. I can do drawings of the silhouettes and the shapes, but I can't give you tear sheets because it does not exist. Alba did it in a different way in the 60s. She was brilliant. But, it looks a little bit sort of dated. I had to make it marry the clothes you have, and we did it. And I did drawings, and I said, you can't use them. They're not that good. And in fact,
that's what the artists do as well, don't they? Like when the designers do it, they don't have something to go by. They have to do drawing because it doesn't exist yet.
No, absolutely. And I did the drawings, and then very quickly, wonderful thing that happened, because I said, don't publish them. They're not very good. And Women's Wear Daily published my drawing of one of the hairstyles and said, and Ludomia wrote up, we chose Nick because of this. I thought, this is brilliant, because it made hairdressers feel part of fashion. Then on top of that, Emilio Pucci himself is long gone. He did the clothes for La Dolce Vita, the wonderful film. And his drawings for La Dolce Vita were on one side of the invitation card to come to the event. And on the other side were my drawings of what it was actually going to look like. And they came in and they saw this, and it was out of this world. But isn't it funny? Because it's one of the things I wanted to achieve is get hairdressers recognized as artists in a creative environment, not just a 15-minute runway show, but an installation that was going to stay there for a week, which was fun,
Yeah. What I love that you said was about getting hairdressers recognized, because, there's very few people out there that will take that step over the line and take that risk to do something different and be judged. Good, bad, or indifferent, because every time we do something that's on the edge, I remember doing some work and then people look. I remember doing a podcast for somebody else, and they said if you did another haircut before you talk about XYZ, whatever we were talking about, he said it'll pull more people in to listen to the podcast or watch the podcast. So, I mean, me, I did this. This was about, I guess, 4 years ago, and I did this mullet that had a fringe that went to here all the way to the top of the ear. The sides were shaved, back was long, and it was interesting. I was talking the haircut through, which was sped up in about 3-4 minutes long. people were commenting from all over. Oh, that's ugly. Ooh, that's terrible looking. So, and I think at one point in my life I would have went, okay, good, and I would have been hurt. But the reality is I knew that was going on. I knew it was coming, and I knew if I did it right away that some people aren't going to like it, and other people are going to say, "Oh, that's spot on. That's what's going on with trend now." And I see that you do all that. You do that all the time. You always seem to be one step ahead of everybody in the looks you do.
Because I think that I think it was Smithy. Brian Smith said to me once, and he said, "I found this thing. It's brilliant." I said, "What is it?" He said, "A trend is a trend if somebody wants it."
Yeah, yeah.
And I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah.
And then the other thing which I found, fashion is fleeting. Fashion is fleeting. It's always changing, but technique really stays the same.
Yeah.
There's a few little quirky bits where you can change it, creating waves with the flat irons and all that. But it's basically, it's the most difficult thing. And I think when I worked in, I was lucky enough to work in a lot of film and TV commercials. They were like films with great directors like Ridley Scott and Adrian Lyne and Michael Saracen and all those people. And they were particular for, absolute perfection. And with the old lighting, with real film, which is very different. Oh, we do it in post. We do it in post. No, you couldn't do it in post. It was the $50,000 they were spending for an hour. I had to get it right. I had to get that look right. And they were very cool and very helpful of how you work, and the work ethic they had was amazing. It was just, it's rather like Robert the Bruce. You watch the spider climbing up and down. He kept falling down, but he kept trying to get up to the top. And if you're a young hairdresser trying to do it, I mean, I went through the turmoil I went through. I mean, you have to read it in the book. It's too long to tell the story, but because I had a famous father, so he was famous, and I was the youngest one who wanted to get into the business, and nobody else wanted to do it. And I had a terrible time physically, mentally, and every other way. And I went, I went to different companies and I did different things to get away from my dad. And that's when I started to grow as an artist and realized I could do it on my own.
How did your dad take that when you went to work with somebody else?
Very, very badly.
In what way?
Originally, because I left school and I went to a Swiss hairdressing school in Bern called Erni, A-E-R-N-I. It still exists, a magnificent school. And they spoke Schweizerdeutsch, which is a bit difficult. It's in Switzerland. And I learned a bit of French, and they didn't really understand what I was doing. So I was colouring people's hair red, and they wanted it blonde or something. But that was in early days. And then I went from there, went back to work for my dad, and it was too nerve-wracking. And so I walked around with drawings, which I can do rough drawings. I was very, very sick for 6 months, and I lay in bed drawing heads of hair and things I dreamed of doing. My brother sent me to New York. He had a job in New York, and I drew outside Kenneth's salon in Vidal Sassoon in New York in the late 1960s. I started drawing the hairstyles I saw coming out. And then I went back to London, and I went with the drawings, and I met Robert Adele, who was one of the big managers at Sassoon's, and he said, "My goodness, you can draw." And I said, "I can't cut hair at all. I've got these big shears, and I cut off my knuckle with the test." And Christopher Brooker very kindly said, "Well, Vidal is worried because of your father." So Vidal Sassoon rang up my father, and I, said, "Well, I've got Nick here, And my dad said, "I never want to speak to him again." So I spent 3 years really not speaking to my dad, working there. And then I went to Canada with Martin Lewis and in Toronto a couple of years later.
How did you and your dad get together again?
Years, Chris, and I went to Sassoon's, and I worked in a Russian restaurant washing up at night. And I got £5 a week from Sassoon's and £5 from washing up. So I made £10. So I stayed in this room, and then I went to Canada with Martin Lewis to work at Bruce Crescendo, a little salon in Toronto, in the Toronto Dominion building. And there's two of them now. There was one of them then. And I was there for 9 months or something. It wasn't very successful. Then I came back, and I tapped on my dad's door in Chelsea, and he opened it up because, all the flights land early. He said, "Oh, the prodigal son has returned." I said, I suppose you want bacon and eggs. And I said, oh my goodness, I'm dying for it. So that was a sort of, and I said to him, I can't really work with you, Dad, because it's too much pressure. You've got 27 businesses, you've got all this stuff going on. And it's too much for me. I'm just a guy wanting to do hair, really. And
well, it was that shadow, right? It's huge shadow to live under.
Oh, and I worked with him quite a lot, And then after that, I went to, some marvelous salons like Derek Rowe, and he recently passed a few years ago. And he was a lovely man. And I was a hair cutter at Sassoon, so I didn't really do long hair at all. I didn't know how to do long hair. Yeah. And a girlfriend of mine called Ingrid Klee, who was about 22 years older than me, and she worked in this salon, and she was a tough German hairdresser, brilliant. And she worked with Marie Claire, who was from Carita in Paris, and a wonderful hairdresser called Spencer. And they said, well, coming to Derek Rowe, you need to do long hair. And I said, I don't know how to do it. So she said, we will teach you one hairstyle, then that's it. But but because I could cut hair, and they were bad hair cutters. I mean, they were terrible hair cutters because they're all in the dressing of hair, like Carita and all that beautiful finish in the hair. So I said, you teach me everything about finishing hair. I'll teach you everything about cutting hair. So that's how I had this wonderful relationship with Derek Rowe for 7 years. And then I went to Martin said, I opened up this salon in Atlanta, and it's called Blood, Sweat and Scissors. So it's the first unisex salon in America. So I went there, I worked there for a bit, which is another long story. You best buy the book and read it because it's too long to tell today. But, and I mean, the first client said to me, I want a shag. In English, that means something different. But,
well, I think most people know here, but shag would be, how would you put it delicately?
We have to do it. It was wrong, it's a lie, don't we? To a degree.
Yeah. So,
anyway, I stayed there. Then I came back, and then I worked I went to Moulton Brown, which was an incredible salon that Michael Collis started, who was a Sassoon hairdresser, and he didn't believe in anything that was not looking very natural, because in the 60s it was sort of uniformity, 70s it became individuality, where everybody wanted to look their own, even if they looked like Nirvana, they're very dreary, everything's very soft and long, and Moulton Brown was all about that. And then I moved on to I got headhunted by Glenby, who owned a salon called Harvey Nichols, which was a trendy salon in a trendy store in those days, in the late 70s. And I went there, and that's where I got my love of doing something different with hair. I said that I went into the office of Harvey Nichols, and I said, why are you using session hairdressers? I can do hair for photographs. You're doing all these Vogue ads and everything else, and Harper's Bazaar. And the guy said, I'll give you one chance. I'll try you out next week. Turn up with your stuff. And I remember it was Glenby. So in those days, a very young Andrew Finkelstein was in charge of me. And I said, I'm going to do this 10 pages in Vogue. He said, how much is that going to cost? I said, nothing. I've got it for free. It's going to have hair by Nicholas French, Glenby Salon, Harvey Nichols, perfect. And I went to do it. And of course, it was a beautiful African-American girl called Jan Stevens. And I got all the pictures, put them on the wall. And they said, but we don't do African-American hair. I said, but it's Vogue. It's not about doing the hair. It's about creating the photograph and the whole thing and the whole, my gosh, Glenby is now in Vogue, please, And that was the beginning of my love of doing the hair photography, and I did Jerry Hall for 500 London buses on the side of the buses, and then people said, you've got an agent, and I started growing into my own skin, if you will, by experience that was quite brave, because I really didn't know what I was doing, but I learned on the job, if you will, and
you talk about session. Awesome. I want you to. Do you remember the Dalmatian dog story that you told me?
Yeah.
Tell everybody that, because I just found that one an incredible story.
Well, because I did, Chris, you see, it was in the punk era, and so I did this punk dog, and in England for this beer commercial.
It was a real dog.
Yeah, and I had to make him look like a punk. So because it was like a guy who was meeting in a pub, a regular guy, and he had a regular dog, and then he met a punk in the pub with a punk dog, and it was about Yorkshire Bitter beer, which is a famous TV commercial that Ridley Scott did, who is obviously, as you know, is a brilliant film director now, but he directed hundreds and hundreds of TV commercials, and so I, with Ridley Scott Associates, I worked with them all the time. So I got known for special effects. So anyway, I get this phone call, and I go into the studio with all my kit in Shepperton Studios, and I said, "Where am I going?" "Oh, you're going out the back." I said, "Why? Normally I work in that room." No. So what you've got to do, this is the dog. I love animals. So I said, "Oh, well, that's great. Now, this is the stuffed dog." "So what are you talking about?" "You've got to do the spots the same as that dog, the spotted dog, on the stuffed dog, because he's going to go up in a balloon, and we will never get the balloon back, right?" So it's the stuffed dog that went out. But they had a wire on the balloon, which is unfortunate. And so they filmed the whole thing anyway. So I got it matched up roughly, It was a black and white dog, so it wasn't too difficult to do. And anyway, at the end of the day, the prop man came and said, "Well, where's it?" We pulled the balloon down. We managed to save the dog. That was like $5,000 of this taxidermist's money. And he said, "Where's the?"
It's not a stuffed dog. It was a real dog that was dead and stuffed.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, he said, "What have you done?" I said, "Well, I had to marry it up. I had to do the same spots as the live dog. You have to get him off. You have to get him off." I said, "Oh God, what can I do?" So in those old studios, they had these old big backwashes, right?
Uh-huh.
So it was stiff. You imagine it's stiff like that. So I put him back like this, at the back like that, into the basin, and I covered him up with and I thought, what can I use to get rid of these spots? And I thought, oh, hang on a minute. There's toilet bleach. That's all I could find. Right? So I poured it on and I started shampooing it. Do you remember years ago, we used to, in desperation, mix up shampoo with bleach.
Yeah,
in desperation.
bleach wash.
That's it. So I thought that'll do the job. And it was midnight and I was getting, in those days, you get no, it was unionized. You got no lunch break, no late break. And then you got over midnight, you got a day's extra money. They went over 1 o'clock, you got like 2 days extra money. So, it was costing a fortune, And I heard Ridley Scott come with a producer down the hall, and I'm shampooing away. I've got a bit of music in the background. I'm doing his feet. He's got all these spots all over. and the prop man said, hurry up, mate. And Ridley was shouting at this guy, saying, God, we've lost a fortune today. The overtime's terrible. And he said, we've got to make it up tomorrow. He said, we'll make it up tomorrow. And then Ridley burst into laughter as he walked past my door. He said, I've got the most expensive hairdresser in London shampooing a dead dog in a basin. No, I said, that says it all. Let's just wrap it up. Forget it. Tomorrow's another day. Let's just, it's crazy, And we did all kind, because I never refused to do anything. They said, well, I want their hair in the shape of a bird, a cactus, and a tap. Oh, there's no problem. I'll do that. And so that's how I learnt how to do foundations for avant-garde hair. Yeah. Because I was forced into it because I needed, we all need money. So I needed to pay my bills. So, the tap was frequent wash hair. The cactus was like brittle, broken hair. And the bird was obviously flyaway hair. It was for Alberta Tresemme sort of shampoo or something. Yeah. And then they'd have it on their head, and they'd have all these pieces on their head, and they'd go through this sort of abyss-type light into like a waterfall in South America or something, and then they come out like Armani models. It's like, so I had to create a lot of things apart from having my salons in England and working there on weekends mainly, and then I had to do TV commercials, and then I had to work for these other people. And then I started doing the shows because people were interested in the finish of the hair that I could create, which was interesting.
How did you get started? How did you get started in shows? Was it? Well, you had I want to do it, or somebody approached you? What happened?
No, brilliant. I had a salon in Surbiton, Surrey, which is a suburb, 17 minutes outside London, And I had a salon there. And then round the corner, there's this sort of hut, okay? And it was Denman hairbrushes. And there was a guy called Chris Burridge, who was he was a big guy at Tresemme eventually. And he retired. He's amazing. He's great, still a great friend of mine. And he comes into the salon, watches me doing some hair, said, Nick, can I have a quick chat? And I said, yeah, what? I've got this thing going on in Reading, and can you do a few models for me? I haven't got any money. I'll pay you a couple of £100 or something. And I said, God, that's exciting. So I got all the daughters of my top clients in the salon that looked beautiful. And we all went down to Reading to do this hair show. And we did it, and there's a few hundred people there and everything else. And he said, you're quite good at doing this. Perhaps you can help me out in the future. I said, anything you want me to do, I'll do. So I got the hang of it. And I remember the next time he phoned me up, he said, can you come to Hong Kong? I said, where's that? I thought it was a restaurant in Chinatown in London. I didn't realise where it was. So I went round there with a few clients' daughters who were quite pretty looking. We did some hair, and they sort of, wow, this is a new take on it. This is quite interesting. So, can you help us out in the future? And I said, yeah, sure. And I remember being, Brian Smith had a hair club in Dunfermline in Scotland, where he invited people up. He invited people from all over the world. It was amazing. He had all kinds of people went up there and did amazing sessions. And I went up there, and he invited me up there. And, it was a tough thing, because Scottish hairdressers are pretty tough, and they're very good. And they don't particularly like English people, especially in that period of time. So I went up there, and they gave me this terrible model to cut her hair. And I looked around the room, and they had like Rita and Irving Rusk. I thought, oh gosh, And it was in a bar, actually, which was appropriate. And then they had the salon called Asoga, and they were marvellous hairdressers. They had all the top Scottish hairdressers there. And this girl had a perm and bleach and goodness knows what. And, when you do a haircut and it gets worse and worse and worse, and you're hoping for something to happen, some miracle.
Please, God.
And it was just one of those days. And I after about an hour, I said, you know what, I'm going up I went up to the bar and said, have a large brandy. And I said, if you don't like it, there's nothing I can do about it, but stay for this afternoon. I've got some interesting things I'm doing that I used to do, for quite famous people. So in the afternoon, I started doing all these foundations with car sponges, with tights and cotton wool and all kinds of things on long hair. And then we got really, then I sort of changed the whole feel of the session. And, and then Smithy said to me, just gave you that model just to see what you could do with it, basically, And anyway, what happened was that week I got a phone call from Denman. We're doing a Denman-Redkin joint show in Hong Kong, and it's on the Kowloon side. So this is a long time ago when the British were sort of ruling it. And can you do it? I said, yeah, sure, And so I spoke up. I rang up Brian Smith, and I said, well, Smithy, I always call him Smithy. I said, Smithy, can you come next weekend? And my staff are driving me crazy, and I'm so sick of it. I'm not going to take them. I'm going to take you. He said, but you haven't seen me do a wee haircut. And I said, no, I know you're a good haircut. I've seen your work. And so we met and we went there. And that was really the international part of what I did. But in Coiffure, I worked with in Atlanta, Jameson Shaw's in 1969. I did demos there. I did bits and pieces. And the first demo I ever did in England, apart from the Denman one in Reading, was in Guernsey, which is a tiny island. And I went for Weller once to do a haircutting thing. And they took me into a pub. They tend to always bring me into a pub. I don't know why, but they said,
that was our pay.
Said, where's the stage? Where's the stage? I said, oh, don't you get it? You push the tables together. You stand up. You get up on the chairs, and you stick your model on the chair and do it. I said, whatever. Yeah. And it was £800, I think. It was quite good money for those days. So I did it. So then after that, it became, the more I did, the more I got published in magazines and stuff, the more people phoned up and said, well, can you do this for us? Can you do that for us? And I would never work for any one person. And then I started doing some of the London shows. And then people say, oh, can you come and do this thing in Australia? Can you come to America? Can you come here? And then Dwight Miller, a great friend of mine, said, you've got to come on tour with me around America, which is another long story. But
was that when he was with Zotos, or when he was with Matrix?
Absolutely good. When he was with Zotos.
Yeah.
And it was Zotos. I did a lot of stuff for Zotos. So that introduced me to the American market. And, and it seemed to be a successful formula that we put together. And then it just, you learn. I mean, I did 9 trips to Hong Kong. I did 8 to Australia. Japan, I toured Japan, which is another in the early 80s. And I was a sort of like pioneer, really, in many respects. The big companies went, but nobody had ever heard of Nicholas French. I think it was like Dwight really was a marvelous advisor in those days to me, because he'd been everywhere, done everything, So he said, no, you don't do that there. You do this here, you do that there. Oh, my goodness. So I got into it, and then I got into, a lot of British sort of photo shoots and things, and I started doing my own photo shoots, and people started publishing them. It's, it's very interesting, really, how it sort of developed,
This episode is sponsored by the Salon Associate Accelerator from trainersplaybook.com. Are you struggling with the time and cost of associate training? Do you feel like your salon is running you? We'll get your associates on the floor, all with 90% less time from you, so you can get back to building your business. Get them world-class design, finishing, color, and client care skills they'll use every day for the rest of their career, while you focus on realizing your vision. Go to trainersplaybook.com and get the Salon Associate Accelerator. And now, back to the show. Nick, was there any of those shows? I mean, we've all had either shows that something happened backstage that nobody ever saw that was a disaster, or there was something that happened on stage it just went wrong. Was there any of those that happened to you?
Oh gosh, I mean, I can't even tell you. I mean, and I think the shows that we started to turn people's heads when we did different things, and so some of the different things weren't so clever, I remember I went to Canada once. It was in Halifax, Nova Scotia, the Canadian Pacific Hotel, a long, long time ago.
Uh-huh.
And they said, oh, great, we've sold 500 seats and all that. I thought, that's good, And it was in the days of block stages where they had blocks, huge great blocks, and they put them together. Remember those? And anyway, they sold another 100 tickets, but what they didn't tell me that the blocks have been taken away. So they said you have worked out some rehearsal. I had 53 steps, and then it's in darkness, Chris. You know how the organisers, you have to help them a bit. So I said, oh, Nicholas, we've got this idea. You come out, you have all these beautiful girls on chaise longues around you in the dark, and then the lights come out, you've got all these beautiful girls, and then you pick them and do them. I said, that's a terrible idea, but we're paying you this money, and it's fine, I'll do it, So, and I counted out the 54 steps, and when I got to about 43, I fell flat into this, luckily, rather a large lady in the front row, right? So I fell off and I had a bump on my head, which still sort of exists to this day. And it got bigger and bigger as the cameras got on it, but that was one. I mean, there's so many disasters that a lot of people didn't know, about. I went to Taiwan once, and, you have to go with the flow. So I threw an interpreter, and I said to her, what do you want me to do here? I've got all these models. Oh, we've got an idea. You've got to do what he wants because he's the money behind the company. So I said, okay, what's the idea? Oh, Nicholas, we have twin girls. I said, okay. And there's a tent in the middle of a department store with 7 different, you could see people around. It was a great chaos. And we had 3,000 people there. And he said, twin girls go out looking the same. When they come back, change hair, look different. I thought, oh, gosh, how ridiculous is that? Oh, you must do it, Nicholas. You must do it. So I had all these wigs and things. I made them totally different. Nobody knew what we were doing. They didn't even realize we'd done it on Twin Girl. It was just a ridiculous idea, you know. But you have to do what people sort of want. And then other things when you get, as you've probably done with earphones, where you have to do, like in Singapore, we had the Mandarin languages, which is somewhat
the
different,
translation.
you know? The translation, isn't it? And you get these people in the booths, and they say, well, Nicholas, this is the script, is what you gave us. You have to be exactly like the script. You can't go off. I said, why not? No, because that's what the interpreters are telling the audience, you know? And then they had this beautiful girl who's going to be like on stage with me, like to interpret if it went wrong. And I did her hair and everything, and she was about 22 or something, you know, absolutely stunning. And so we go on there, and it was one of those things where we bought beautiful wardrobe from England. I mean, really spectacular wardrobe for Matrix, and they spent a huge amount of money on this. They did a fabulous job with me, supporting me, you know. And I go there, and I have storyboards, you know, the old storyboards. This is the makeup, this is the hair, this is what the clothes are going to look like, okay? And so the guy, you know, lovely little guy comes in with this beautiful gown, orange gown. He's got this terrible sort of Western bar waistcoat on it with Diamante. And I said, excuse me, permission to speak, but that doesn't quite look like we need to take that away. And then the makeup came, it looked like leprosy, you know, it was like it was a living hell to get this right. And then this girl who was the interpreter, and I said, this is how, you remember all the tricks, and we've done that for years together, you know, the tips and tricks. This is how you make a hairpin disappear, the simple stuff that means more than the whole show. Yeah. And I said, this is how you put the pin in backwards, and then and look, with the camera, the guy got the camera, and the hair closed behind it. It was like magic. And I said, that's how you make a hairpin disappear. And this girl kept going, woo, woo, woo. Every time I did something, it was interesting. She did it. She wooed. And I said, is there any chance that at half time they can stop mooing, you know? It was like that. It was ridiculous. And then after that, they loved me. So I went to all these other, I mean, the things that happen are just, you know, people trying to steal the wardrobe, you know, from the audiences. Oh my goodness. You have all that going on because it's a beautiful wardrobe. And we were in Phuket. Actually, where was it we went to, which was brilliant, called MAD, Matrix Australia Destination. Fantastic. And the CEO of Matrix at that time came to Phuket, where we had the wonderful Benny Tognini working with me. Oh, my goodness. And Joe Jordan is a brilliant colorist from England. And we get there, and for some reason, they're organizing people. I won't mention any names here. So we don't feel well. You get it together. I'll be back in 2 days. So I said, fine. You know, and the CEO from Australia was there. I said, any help you need, Nick, I'll be here for you. I said, great. You know, I can stop those people stealing the wardrobe and running out the door. And we had 2,000 hairdressers from all over, like everywhere, from India, from everywhere, you know. And it was fabulous. And so we do this show, and we get it all ready and rehearse it. You know, Ben is brilliant. Joe is fantastic. And all the choreography's done, everything's done. And then this lady comes and said, I don't like it. I said, but we've got an hour before that people come in. Oh, I don't like it. I think it should be Shopping Girl in New York, Girl Meets Boy in New York shopping. I said, I don't think you're going to understand that in sort of like, you know, China, you know, it's not, they're not going to get it. And he was, oh gosh, it was an absolute nightmare. But we got through that. But the CEO of Australia said, if you can go through that, you're coming to Australia to do this show. Yeah. And he had this idea. They always have an idea because they think because they're in charge, you know, they're fantastic people, really. I said, what's going on here? Oh, and Errol Douglas came with us that time, and Joe Jordan and Benny was there. Errol was amazing. He was a great friend of mine. I miss him terribly. And so we go to this huge ballroom, and there's Alice in Wonderland stage with a table and all the teacups and everything laid out. So what's going on here? Oh, what we're going to do is we're going to do an avant-garde segment, and it's all going to be Alice in Wonderland. So they sit down and have tea and everything else, And Joe Jordan's a hair cutter. He said, I don't do avant-garde. I said, I don't. Well, I do it for you. I make it simple, use the clippers, do whatever. I'll help you out. I'll set you up for success. And anyway, all the people there, and then the people who came from Asia, because it sat about 50 people, this table. And so we're all ready with the models, and we're thinking, okay, this is great. We're going to do their hair and everything like that. And then we turn round, and all the Asian people were sitting at the table. It was for them in the middle of the show. So we had nowhere for them.
Now you have new models.
It was ridiculous, But I mean, falling off stages, that's interesting, getting to places. I mean, I went to Venice once in the winter. And in those days, many years ago, in the early 80s, very early 80s, and it was for L'Oreal I went there for, and they were expecting to see the late, wonderful Joshua Galvin, somebody working, and the agent had the right to change the people. And I turned up with Mark Whitlow and said, who the hell are you? I said, we've got to do this. And it was in the winter. It was fascinating. So all these things, you've got to go with the flow, and then when it gets down to it, just do some beautiful hair.
Yeah.
Just do something, even if it's simple, even if it's on a mannequin hair, just do something that's absolutely breathtaking. I remember doing a show once at Matrix, and the CEO comes up. He was a wonderful man. And he said, everybody gather around. This is the way I want the hair to look. Look, you can see your face in the hair. It's so shiny. And he turned around and said, Nick, what product did you use? And I said, nothing. I blow dried it with a Denman brush. And he was like, no, Nick, you're working for a company, we're paying you, you need to make some product. But
make up a damn product.
In those days, as you know, Chris, many years ago, people could not finish hair. So
but where did you learn how to finish hair like that?
I learned my dad with the Denman brush, and Sassoons when I worked for them. All you had was a Denman brush to actually blow dry the hair. Yeah. And it's quite interesting the tension you can get on a blow drying with a Denman brush. And it's like I remember Chris Benson and I did a program for Matrix, and we had all the trainers, and we said, you know what? I said to Chris, let's get them to do a long mannequin head, no sectioning clips, wet, and blow dry it perfectly. And you know what? Yeah. Everybody went mad. They were sweating, they were struggling, they were freaking out. I said, that's one of the first things they used to teach you at Sassoons, is just to work with the heavy one, And
the 9-row.
And that was because in my dad's time, my dad invented the brush with Denman Dean, but for back brushing, they actually put volume in the hair with back brushing. And John Cornell, who left my dad, went to Sassoons, and Sassoons said, well, show me what you do with Freddie. Because they were good friends. So I showed him this. And then he said, I don't want to do that. It won't suit me. And he worked out how to blow dry hair in opposite durays, take all the volume out and whatever, with the Denman. So that's the end of the story. And I think they still make a couple 100,000 a month, Denman Dean, after all these years. And it was invented in 1938 for my dad's hairstyle called design disorder, which was when hair actually moved and nobody liked it. But it's another story. But
another disruptor, right?
Yeah, I was trying to disrupt this guy playing tennis this morning, but he disrupted me.
Nick, what when it comes to this, what pushes you? I mean, everybody knows what you do. I love it, the fact that you have the ability to make beautiful hair, like long, beautiful hair, have waves, it's polished, it's shiny. And you have the ability to cut a beautiful head of hair. You have the ability to make avant-garde, and it's still tasteful. But what pushes you? Why do you do what you do?
I think that my dad, he was a wonderful man, but he ended up in a very bad way, and he was very depressed about his whole life and everything he did. And he did amazing things, and I was sort of angry about that. So I thought, I've got to do something, but I've got to take it to the next level. It's like I was asked to judge a competition once in LA, one of those Bravo sort of pilot things, where, all that stuff. We've all done that. And you go to the studio and these guys come and do hair and it was avant-garde. And these guys came and did this hairdo and there was a team. And I said, well, do you think, when you do avant-garde hair, when you do anything creative, you have to climb a mountain. You go up all these different camps, like they do Everest. You have to get all these different levels. Then you have to go beyond, then you finally get to the top of the mountain. Do you think you've got to the top of the mountain with this? So I'm trying to be subtle, and it was an amazing Viacom thing, big deal. And they said, oh yeah, we got to the top of the mountain. I said, well, the problem you never turned around because there's another 3 mountains you need to climb. Whoa. So in the back of my mind, Chris, I always said, of course, I got my wonderful wife, Carol, who said, what are you doing? It's terrible. You need to do more. And she's always right.
She's subtle, right?
Subtle, yeah. But she always pushes me to the next level. No, it's not right. So when I do things, I think of first of all, originality. It's not me too, And I want it to be beautiful. I don't want to be like the models looking like The Walking Dead, which we've seen a lot of. I want to be absolutely fabulous, to represent our industry perfectly, as a real, a Valentino kind of feel to it. My goodness, absolutely stunning stuff. I have to have that. And because it's a responsibility to the people I teach and to the people that came behind me. And hopefully the people will take it on in the future, because with all this sort of disinformation, goodness knows what, and that's going on with, some of it's good, some of it's awful. I don't know. You need to really establish the real deal. I'm not doing it in post. I'm doing it for real. Yeah. It's not going to be retouched. It's going to be absolutely, in an art form, what you can do with hair, I mean, like Benny Tognini yourself, you were some of the forerunners of seeking different shapes and stuff. And you had to go through the bad to get to the good, often, and you have to have the ability to say, what, it's like my dad worked with Norman Parkinson, one of the greatest photographers, and I suggest people look him up because he's an amazing man. And my dad was 5'1", he was 6'7", so they were slightly, and he was a photographer, and they went to a studio for a whole week every night to do test shoots, to try and do different things with hair, with photography, and Sparks, his name was. He was an amazing man. And at the end of the week, they were trying these different things. And Parkinson said, Freddie, go and get the box of film. Got the box of film. And he said, go and get that bottle of brandy the Sultan of Brunei gave me when I was photographing him on the ladder. So my dad went up and down the ladder. And this is in the 1950s. And he said, you see the fire over there? Throw everything into the fire. He said, why? He said, you don't want people to know we did that kind of work. That's crap, And they spent every night for 6 nights doing it. And then they did some beautiful stuff together. But it was all part of that sort of courageousness and to really, to embrace fear to get to the next level. And,
do you have pieces that you make that didn't work out? I mean, everybody sees the work that they think, well, you must have done that last night. And now you photograph it.
No, my studio in the Hamptons is like Hannibal Lecter's garage. It's got stuff in there that will never see the light of day. And then you've got little pieces of the hair that I've done. Ooh, that's interesting. I'm going to develop that. And, I do courses there and stuff for people. I had some amazing people come. Oh, my goodness. I had a guy the other month came and he said, I said, well, let's have a coffee. Who did you work with? What do you want to get out of this whole thing? I said, I spent 2 years with Andy Warhol. I thought, oh, gosh, what am I going to do for him, Brilliant hairdresser. But we found things that we could show each other, if you will, and it developed into something quite fresh and new. So it's a matter of seeking different things and looking elsewhere from hairdressing,
Yeah.
It's like I came back from a studio a few years ago with my niece, who's actually an artist. And I came back from that studio, and it was actually Jackson Pollock's studio. and it had all these splashes on the floor, Chris, of color and stuff, and it was a sad sort of story. It was he died in a car crash, and he was a mess. And his wife, who was an incredible artist, one day said to him, he was in the same conversation as Picasso and de Kooning. He was huge, right? And he did beautiful, regular sort of paintings and stuff. And his wife said, do something different. Do something that's groundbreaking. You're a drunk, you're a drug addict, you're an idiot. So he goes out with a cigarette in his mouth.
Nothing like encouragement, right?
I know, yeah. No, but she was brilliant. And he was terrible. And he had this pot of house paint and pigment, and he had a beer in his hand, a cigarette, that and the pigment, and it went up in the air and it fell on the floor and it splashed. And he got this amazing sort of splashes and dollops of paint. And then he saw that, and he came out of this whole thing and started doing it. And he met Guggenheim, the woman, he had an affair with him, whatever. But he started doing it, and then Life magazine picked up on it, and then he started this whole new group of people painting like this. And then his last painting sold for 18.8 million, because it was all about the one thing I'm getting to here is having the idea. So we went back to my studio with my niece, my late brother's daughter, who's a wonderful artist. We went back there and we got horse's hair, and we started working with that in colours and dolloping paint. And it was quite extraordinary how that was actually quite original, and it looked really interesting. So you can get ideas from different places and convert it to hair, And I mean, when they said at the NAHA or whatever, you can do it as long as it looks like hair. I'm very English. I was a bit angry. I thought there's got to be hair of some kind,
Yeah.
But and that's sort of I get my ideas from things, and I draw it out with white chalk on black paper, because my dad years ago used to have salons that were like art galleries. There wasn't a picture of hair in the window, and I said, well, Freddie, I called him, why don't you have pictures of hair in the window? He said, because people will look at the picture. I don't like that hairdo. I won't go in. So he made these sculptures of shells and God knows what, which I helped him with my childhood was basically spent assisting my dad making these sculptures. But people went in, then he did a drawing of what hairstyle he was going to do for the client, which was really clever. So, and then he had artists recreate drawings of the trends, and it was on everything. So he really didn't want to do photographs. He did thousands of photographs eventually, but originally he just did drawings so people could get a sensibility of the silhouette. Extraordinary detail, but I have a responsibility to really, in my short lifetime, hopefully be a bit longer, to really develop ideas and things so people have a sensibility, hairdressers, of who we really are. We're not just some sort of like a overnight success because you have 10 million followers. We can actually create beautiful, beautiful hair. And as Chris Sorby said once, I'm not just rather Vivian McKinder and Chris, I think, said it, I'm not just a hairdresser, I'm an artist. And I think that's very prevalent. And that's what I like the young people, because it's really what it is what, you and I, Chris, and other people like us leave behind, as a sort of pretext of who this future revolution of people is going to be, and I think that's problematic, but it's,
Nick, I remember one time you said, and I hope I'm not bringing up something that I don't, at my age, I can't remember half of the stuff that happened to me, but I remember one time you telling the story about how somebody came up to you, and I don't know if you were at a show or a class or whatever it was, but I remember the story, something to the effect, I'm paraphrasing, where the person came up to you and said, how can someone, I believe he said, as old as you teach our younger stylists? Do you remember that?
That's brilliant. Yeah, very well.
Yeah. How did you deal with that?
Well, I'll tell you this quick story. So that was actually in Singapore, which was fascinating because beautiful place, beautiful people, beautiful show and everything, and it's like, you look back and think, I'll never do anything like that again. And it's, you think it's going to happen every day. It doesn't. So at the end of the show, and I remember it very clearly, we went to this beautiful hotel in Singapore, right? It's 9:00 at night. I'm being interviewed by 8 journalists with interpreters. I've got the L'Oreal PR for Asia, Nicholas Kraft, who's the CEO for the whole of Asia, next to me. All that's going on with an interpreter, right? And everybody, and I remember I had a black Comme des Garçons suit on. I was playing the part entirely. And all the press people were lovely. Oh, it's a fabulous show. We loved it, whatever, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then the last person comes up and she looked a bit angry, really. And she says, why is someone your age come here teach our young people how to do hair? Right? So luckily, I worked with L'Oreal at that time. In the old days, I would have strangled her, but I was very sort of
metaphorically.
Said, metaphorically. Metaphorically. Don't say anything, Nick. So I thought, oh, what can I say? And by some stroke of luck, outside this hotel window, it's a beautiful place. It was a huge advertising awning, okay, and it had Calvin Klein. It was a topless girl and a topless boy. Underwear ad, right? And I said, can I ask you a question? And then the interpreter was going, no, can I ask you a question? I said, how old is Calvin Klein? I don't know. He was 66 at that time. How old is Valentino? He was 79 at that time. How old is Giorgio Armani, I said, how old is Karl Lagerfeld? Nobody will ever know. He's probably 104 with a ponytail, And I said, how all even Alexander McQueen just passed. He was like 51, I think. I said, do you think they've had any influence on young people? I went on and on and on. And then she said, oh, I don't know. I said, well, think about it, because there's a wonderful bar there, and I've been up since 3 a.m., the 3 a.m. call, get yourself down there by 4. And I said, I'm going to have a nice glass of champagne. It's been a pleasure meeting you. It's been fantastic being here in Singapore.
Yeah.
You young people are in good hands. And off I went. And that was my last day, I thought, until the next morning. Christopher Kraft is a German guy, brilliant marketing guy, banging on the door. I thought, oh, God, what have I done now, And he said, quick, Max Schnell, Arbeiten Max Schnell, which means work quickly. And he said, Nick, you've got to come downstairs. You've got all the models ready. I said, what are you talking about? I thought we finished. No, we've got Asia Today, which has 9 million people look at Asia Today. And we've got the models and we've got the Matrix name up there. We can do what we want. The woman was so impressed in what you said to her, she recommended you, but we've got to be there in an hour. So I got dressed and everything. We went down, and I think they used it at L'Oreal for years as an example of how to turn around a difficult situation into being something that's going to really be 9 million people hearing the Matrix name and seeing me work with the product was brilliant. And just holding it back and just saying as it is, and I think that
worked out so much better than strangling her.
Oh, absolutely.
Metaphorically, as we say.
Metaphorically, absolutely.
Yes. Nick, I want to run by. Got some rapid fire questions I'm going to throw you at you. Just whatever comes to your brain, quick 1-word answers, 2-word answers, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, so what turns you on in the creative process?
The idea.
What stifles it?
Negative. Being negative.
An event or a show, and I know there's been many, but the first one that comes to your mind that you loved it blew you away.
Alternative Hair Show London 2013.
Thing in life that you dislike the most?
Negative people.
What you love the most?
Very, very positive, great people. Inspirational people.
Proudest moment of your life?
I think winning NAHA a few times.
Thing that you hate the most about our industry? I should put dislike. Hate's a bad word.
Dislike, really. It's difficult. I think influencers.
Okay, person that you admire the most?
Ooh, that's difficult, really. I think Antoine of Paris in the turn of the century. I can't remember his name. You wish with C. It's Kepelwitzka. My dad went for a trial there once, but I thought he was brilliant. Yeah. Antoine and what's the film Hairdresser, Chris? That was, oh gosh, got me on the spot here. I wish I had the question before. I'll think of it. Yeah.
Person that you wish you could meet.
Wow. That's a difficult one. There's so many people I wish I could meet, really. I have to pass on that because there's so many. There's so many people. It's like, and I wish I could meet and they've gone,
Yeah. Well, if they were gone, who would that be? Just one that comes to your brain. I know there's many, but one that comes to your brain.
My dad met Picasso, and I'd love to have met him.
Oh,
yeah,
that would be incredible.
Which is another story, but that's be in the book.
Yeah, something people don't know about you.
Gosh, that's difficult, isn't it? That I'm difficult. I'd love to. I'm a tennis fanatic. I love to play tennis still, and I love watching it. And that's my sport, really. I just love it, and and that's it. And I remember I got asked to come to New York to do the girls for the tennis thing in Clairol many years ago. And then when I got here, I played for Clairol in a charity match, and they said, "You didn't want to come and do that? Was that money wasn't good?" That's my passion, really.
Yeah.
Art.
A month off. Where would you go? What would you do?
Well, I'm writing a book. I'm in Palm Springs at the moment. I'm writing the book on my father's life and my life, and it's going to be like hopefully a coffee table book. And that's what I've been doing. Was I need to get away and get a bit of peace and quiet, and and that's where I am at the moment. I've been here for 3 weeks. Got another week to go.
A thing that terrifies you.
Failure and mediocrity. Failure and mediocrity.
Favorite curse word?
Why not?
There you go. Favorite comfort food?
Gosh, this is brilliant, isn't it? I don't know. I love Indian food.
Give me some good curry.
In America. Yeah, it's difficult to find in America.
Yeah, something in the industry that you haven't done that you'd want to.
I'd love to get up to the top of some of these companies to show them what it's really about, the industry. I think there's so much disinformation and whatever. It's all very political and I think it needs creative people. Rather like Karl Lagerfeld made Chanel popular with young people.
Yeah. If you had a do-over, something you could do over in your life, what would that be?
I should have been more aggressive when I was in the positions I was in companies. I should have been more aggressive to get to the top. Then I had to have a say and perhaps being able to lead companies to where I think hairdressing companies should be and what they should do, who they should be,
Yeah. Tomorrow, you couldn't do hair or anything to do with the industry. What would you do?
I'd probably draw, and I'd love to be, I love film. So I'd love to do sets. I'd love to be a set designer.
In a sentence, if you had one wish for our industry, what would that be?
I think it would be, in a sentence, I think this industry needs to reset and grow as it was before all the pandemics and everything else, and to really, so that hairdressers can be proud to be hairdressers and be really part of the creative mindset of the world. The only thing you can change in a person physically, apart from plastic surgery, is their hair. Even designers can't say that. So that's what we should be at the top of the designer process, if you will. And we're not. We're just treated as, it's just an accessory. It's not an accessory. It's the thing that comes out of your head. It's live, and it's really part of the personality. It's like my father always said something brilliant. And he said in consultation, if you understand the inside of a woman's head, you have a chance of getting the outside right.
I love
and
it.
He said good luck after. But that was so true, isn't it, Chris?
Yeah, it is.
There's
Nick,
so many
you were talking about your dad's, you and your book. Do you have any idea when that's done, or if people want to book you in? I know you do. You do sessions. You mentor people. If somebody wanted you they wanted you to mentor them for avant-garde or anything, or somebody wanted you to do a seminar for them, where would they go? How would they get a hold of you?
They just get a hold of me on my web, frenchintl@aol.com, which is that's the easiest way. My website's a bit up in the spoke. We've been hacked
French,
into.
and it's FRENCHINTL at AOL.com.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
We're doing a seminar down in Atlanta in November, the 5th to the 7th. And also we've got some people coming to my studio in the Hamptons for training as well in September. So you can always get hold of me.
Yeah, and they can get on for there. And when your book is, I mean, first of all, I want a copy. I'll pay because I know what that goes through. But when that book is ready, where can they find that? Can they just go on that same site?
Yeah, because it's going to take. I have to do a mock-up, then I have to get the publishers all organized, and all that kind of stuff.
But it'll be if you want people ready for it, can they just email you there?
Absolutely.
And then you've got okay.
Absolutely.
I'll get you an email list.
And don't be shy. Don't be shy. They can get hold of me anywhere, really.
Yeah,
because,
just at the bar, right? I'll be at the bar across the street.
That's it. That's it.
Nick, I want to thank you, my friend. It has been too long since we've broken glass together, I guess I might say. Yeah. So I just want to say thank you for being on board. Thank you for giving your time, and more importantly, just for everything that you've done for our industry. I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, my friend, it's a pleasure to call you my friend. It's a pleasure to call you a peer, and it's a pleasure to call you a mentor as well. So, my friend, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity to be with you, Chris. Yes. Perfect. You take care.
Cheers.
Cheers.